current situation, the fact that, we have completed a program and then we go into the CD challenges, the economy, and the structure as of today that we see it, would you say that your hands were tied and that you had no choice than to, even after you had put together that homegrown program and then gone to Senche, had all those fantastic ideas that economists and businessmen in this country came up with, and we're all happy thinking that, okay, we could implement our own thing, not having to go to anywhere? Would you say
no,
your hands were tied, that you were pushed to go to the IMF?
No. You have to be pragmatic if you are managing an economy. Mm-hmm. And contrary to what people say, one of the outcomes of Senche is to go to IMF because the fiscal situation, particularly after we had calculated the liability associated with the single span. And after, we had seen the situation, remember, back then we had a bit of drought and other things.
Yes.
When we had seen all of this, the pragmatic thing to do was to go to the IMF.
You had no choice.
Well, I said the pragmatic thing to do. You see, when you talk, yes, it was one of choices. You go or you don't go. Remember I said that when we took over in 2013 and we did a homegrown with assistance of African Development Bank, we thought we could manage. But then when you calculate the subsidy liabilities, when you calculate in particular the impact of lack of gas supply, I remember back then, crude oil was selling at over $100. We benefited from it and created a sinking fund and other things, which was the positive side. But remember, we're not getting cheap gas from Nigeria, and we had to buy crude for VRA using our hard currency to keep the power running. Right. So the situation just suggested that you needed an institution to support the economy that would bring DPs, that would be development partners, that would bring the World Bank, African Development Bank, and others to support the economy. It was a pragmatic thing to do. Right. But that wasn't the initial plan. The initial plan was to say, remember we had just exited an IMF program.
Yes, we had.
Yes. So the program was to say, let's be pragmatic. And by the way, it's not just African or Ghanaian. Cast your mind back to the global financial crisis. The countries you call the pigs. Portugal, Ireland,
I think Greece.
Greece, and Spain.
All of them.
Yes, these are advanced countries. And these are countries which, ever since World War II, never went to the IMF. Well, ever since the support that came in World War II, as a context of the EU, had never gone to the IMF. And yet still, what was the pragmatic to do when they got into that financial crisis? And unlike maybe Germany, America and others, they took in the brunt of it. They went to the IMF as part of the package. But then what they did was, immediately they put their austerity package and things together, they exited. And they may not go to the IMF for a long time. It's the severity that took them to the IMF. And this is what, again, if you remember, the Latin American countries and indeed the Asian economies did. They used to go to the IMF. If in the 1980s and the great Latin American and Asian crisis, it was the IMF that came in.
Is it that we are so indisciplined as a country that we are not able to stay out of having to go for regular programs?
No, fiscal discipline could be one of it. And that's why you had to do programs like Give Me. You have to move from cash accounting to accrual accounting. We can go into those details later. Because if you are doing cash accounting, you take your receipts, you take your payments, right? And then you balance the budget, and you have a deficit. And then you calculate arrears. And the way you calculate arrears is not the way the accountant, like myself, calculates the arrears. You take bills that have come to the Ministry of Finance in the last 3 to 6 months, which remain unpaid. And that's your definition of arrears. By the time you are calculating those arrears for contracts and arrears, remember the ministries, especially the real sector ministries that generate those arrears, are awarding contracts.
They are still awarding, they are spending.
They are completing contracts.
Yes.
Which had been awarded. And the certificates had come to that ministry. And the certificates had come to even Ministry of Finance, which were beyond the 3 to 6 months. So what we sought to do was to go back and do what we call the contract database. To do an inventory so that for once we would know what they were holding at the time, of the budget as part of Give Me. And that is the 7 billion which was disclosed as though they were part of the 3 to 6 months, and for which an offset was made. No payment was made. And I keep challenging. No payment was made. It was a deep structural problem, and we had introduced for the first time an accounts payable model in GIFMIS that would take it. And the idea is that, once you have collated all of that, then you put it in the medium-term expenditure framework, no longer annualized. And if you have awarded contracts, right, which are outstanding and could take 2 years or even 3 years, which is the period of the GIFMIS, including the current year, then you cannot award any new contracts. And so you create a pipeline. Those are the sort of transitions which the emerging countries and others and advanced countries implement. So you have to implement structure. So it's not just, that's a fiscal discipline element of it. But remember when our conversation, there is the factors which you cannot control. In the US, if demand slows down in the US, slows down in Germany, and the price for your cocoa goes down, you earn less forex. That has nothing to do with Ghana, right? Then the solution is add value.
Yes.
Right. So we then have to have a policy, like the budget policy I just mentioned. You have to begin to have a policy. And for that one, we have always done the non-traditional exports, except it didn't come with guarantees. It didn't come with export credit.
Why?
Trade credit. Why?
Yes.
You didn't have the instrument for it. You didn't have the institution for it. And that institution is the Exim Bank, which you created to respond to it. So we were looking at, what is it that is not making Ghana move, right? For example, so you had loans, and then you had bullets, and we are returning to bullets. Bullets simply mean, let me give a very practical example.
Okay.
Let me give a practical example. 2007, we issued the first sovereign bond.
Yes.
It was a bullet that was to be paid in 10 years. Then in 2014, you have 3 years to go, and you had to cough $750 million US. In 2017, that's what it means. Could we look at 2017, the condition from crude oil price falls, which we entered?
So you decided to go for refinancing?
No, yeah, we did refinancing, but we said we are getting additional revenue from Jubilee, which is new to the budget. So we set up the sinking fund. So we refinanced only $250 million of the $750 million and used our own oil revenue flowing from Jubilee and into the sinking fund to take off $500 million cash. We were doing buybacks.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Those are the structures. So you begin to create, if you are going to borrow, then create market instruments. Right. Another is that we borrow and we create commercial projects. Right? And the projects don't pay for the loan. And I heard on your show today, RMB is doing, and the interviewer said, I think he's a Ghanaian. I had this debate, and people said it wouldn't work. And I said, self-financing should work for Africa.
Value for money.
Yes, not just value for money. But Terminal 3 is a good example. And I disagree with the minister. You do Terminal 3, it brings in more airport tax. So why should the taxpayer pay for the loan? You ring-fence, the airport tax.
But you did Ghana Gas, which was supposed to be able to pay for itself. But today, government is not even paying for the cost.
And that is because the chain.
GRA owes them so much.
No, but that is the chain. The waterfall.
Yes.
Is the ineffectiveness of the waterfall. Because remember the waterfall, which is where the PSP comes in and the new companies come in. So you have to look at the whole chain.
So that's what some people say, that the government itself is indisciplined.
No, excuse me. The question to ask is, why are we not implementing the waterfall? Right? Why are we? Because, as I said, we were focused on getting the waterfall supported the partial risk guarantee, which was to, provide the. So you had a chain, which was to provide the resources for the payment, of the chain. So hopefully, and I would hope that the new company can put accounting systems in place, put prepaid metering in place. After all, we used to have landlines, right?
Yes, now we have more.
And we used to accumulate a lot.
Yeah.
Of a lot of bills. There's MTN come to complain to government about. If you don't buy your units, you don't make your call. So we were going to, remember we took a loan for prepaid meters. We were just going to populate like the phone. So now everybody moves to prepaid.
Including
right?
government agencies.
Yes.
I remember Professor Mills the late Professor Mills gave that order that, ministries.
And we converted, most ministries today are on, prepaid metering. I implement that policy. And we said, use your budget, to pay. If it's been reversed.
But then some of them complain that not every fund that was approved was coming to them.
There will never be enough funds. There will never. We are in economics, right?
Yes.
Needs versus wants.
Demand and
supply.
especially,
yes. And especially when we implemented the policy in 2014. Just listen, 2013, 2014, 2012, actually 2011, 2012, we had it good. Crude oil prices were high. The budget was, ABFA was fat enough to support, and then to channel, into financing, right? Many of these things. So we created sinking fund, we did all of it. 2015, crude oil prices fell. The discipline must run through. So you don't keep consuming fuel at the same level when the nation is not getting revenue.
Now let me take you to...
But let's complete the issue of the fund.
Of the fund,
So exiting, and you will notice, you can go and play it back carefully, you will notice the language, the bullish language in the 2019 budget.
Which didn't take cognizance of Article 4.
No, exactly. And we didn't take, and the questioner asked, so would you opt for PSI? Listen carefully. So would you opt for PSI? The language, that bullish language, had been toned down in that interview, in the Bloomberg interview. And they said, of course. And this is in my article. This is what I kept saying, that we are not exiting our membership of the Gazette, if there's anything like that, which is the equivalent of Brexit, Ghana exiting, if there's anything like that, did not involve leaving the EU or leaving the IMF, the equivalent of leaving the EU. It involved stopping programs. And as members of the IMF, we are subject to Article 4. So whether you like it or not, you cannot come, and that's a caution, you cannot come and misbehave, with your fiscal. You cannot go on a borrowing spree. You cannot go, those are the sort of fiscal things that we needed to control through buybacks, through sinking funds, and for which we were putting the structures in place, for which we put the Public Financial Management Act in place. And adherence to the public. So if you come and mismanage because you have left the IMF for another government to come and take over the problems, and then you say, I exited the IMF, and you are bringing me back to the IMF, no. This time we have long enough period, unlike Single Spine, which we took over because it wasn't experimental. We have long enough period. And so the language is being toned down. The reality is setting in that you continue to have Article 4, which was considered. And the reporting, I think there's nothing different between Article 4 and a review and a program. That's why it is enhanced, right? That's the word. That's why it is enhanced. It is an enhanced, but the review will continue. The United States, the US, Germany, and others are subject to Article 4. And if they didn't handle things right, the IMF says so. And the markets will take the signal. Right.
Okay, Mr. Tekpe, this brings me to, do you have that feeling that the current government may not be able to handle things very well? Because many have said, listen, election years are years where governments always overspend their budget. And already we are not generating enough. We've seen the revenue figures drop from the GRE side.
No, let me come out clear. I was accused, remember 10.3
yes.
and 10.9.
Yes.
Right? Which I keep arguing that it was not part of arrears.
Now what was it?
I told you that we were transitioning to semi-accrual.
Okay.
And that if you took the narrow definition of arrears, remember I made a presentation, at La Beach Hotel, in which I had a graph and showed the effect of election year expenditure on the economy. I can give it to you, and after the interview. And coincidentally, a lecturer from the University of Ghana who was on the panel had done virtually the same thing, the same analysis. So for us, it was enough warning that 2016, despite the fall in crude oil price, and remember, because we wanted to banish this, election year expenditure, remember, let's not forget, 2015, we went to when the crude oil prices, and when the crude oil prices fell,
yeah.
and we did a budget with $99 and found ourselves
around
selling
60
crude.
something.
No, 60.
Around 40.
40.
Yeah,
yes.
40, yeah. You came to around 40.
Exactly. When we found ourselves selling crude at that price, we went to Parliament to trim the budget. And in the election year, 2016 election year, we went to Parliament again to trim the budget. And most people said, why go in an election year? And I think we should take all this into account. When the crude oil prices fell, we went to Parliament. You know, that statement is there. You can go to Parliament and verify. So we were mindful that Ghana needs to banish this. But the one thing which, you know, maybe with hindsight, you know, was to have, not to have brought on, which again would have been hypocritical. It would have been opportunistic. Because we were doing giftness. And you can go back to the one, you can go back two sources. You may want to take note. Go back to the program. First, the homegrown policy and the IMF program itself, the structural part, and you will see the shift to accrual accounting as part of those documents. You can go to the MEFP, you know, the Memorandum of Economic Policy, it is there. But the other document I want to point you to is, you can go to the 2017 budget guidelines, which we issued. And the table with the Auditor General reproduced is there. So my question to the Auditor General at the time was, why didn't you state that this was part of the shift to accrual accounting? And their answer, which I don't find convincing, is that we're not supposed to be checking, you know. But I said, you all know that it was in the budget, that we had less arrears. So we're mindful of that, and I hope that we'll be mindful is a reality. It was nothing to do with that. It was a pipeline which we wanted to put onto the giftness, like sinking fund. For example, if we were mindful of 2016 as an election year, we wouldn't put money in the sinking fund. We would spend it. But we were confident, you know, but we were implementing deep structural programs. So we created a sinking fund and took off that liability. We could have been politically expedient, you know, and said, okay, it's 2017, let it come and we'll take care of it. But we took off, and we had a balance of $200 million US, which was used to take off the balance on due date, October 4th. It was quiet. I wonder if you reported it. If you didn't, you can go back. It was taken up quietly. It won an award, and yet it was taken up like ESLA. So we went through all those because we didn't want that experience, right? Now, fast forward.
Yeah.
Once you say, I left 7 billion, you would have to pay 7 billion in 2017. Here is a balance carried forward.
Carried forward, yes.
So what it was done, that's the offset, and you can go again and look at it. You can look at the financing. And we are saying that what they did was to offset 5 billion of the pipeline, which wasn't defined as arrears, in the 2016 budget.
It was left.
And so you had, it was like 2 billion. And so you had a situation where you left a liability of 7 billion, and you included that in the fiscal program for 2016, and then trumpeted that the deficit was 10.3, right? And then immediately fast forward, you claim that you paid. If you paid, why are you factoring the debt today? Why are you saying that you are going to use even the bond, current bond that was part of it to pay creditors? You know, for arrears that was cleared, you know, in 2017.
It brings me to your last article, which actually said, was the 2018 financial year budget deficit 4.4
a similar thing,
or 3.7?
Well, a similar
a question that you raised over there.
Well, the same thing. First, it was an offset, and what was done now, you know, was to take the 2 billion bailout, 2.2 billion bailout, and treat it as a footnote.
Wow. Is it a question of they applying the accounting principles wrongly, or what?
No, there's enough knowledge within the Ministry of Finance, I'm sorry. There's enough knowledge. You know, there's enough accountants in the Controlling Accountant General in the Ministry of Finance, GRA. No.
So why are we having these things? I mean, why are all these things coming up?
It comes back to what the IMF, you know, raised in a very diplomatic way. Fiscal discipline. So if you use these methodologies, you know, to get your deficit and it looks good, They are saying maybe we are reading between the lines.
But that in itself, it should not be a big issue. Debt to GDP ratio. This has been one of the issues that keeps coming up in this country. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at that of Japan, and they're running around 200 and almost 75%. Not to talk of the US. So how is it that
your best interest rate until the current one,
yes,
was 8.25%. Japan borrows are sub-zero. And everybody has confidence that Japan will pay, that Japan will not default, that Japan will not.
So it's the reason why the roof
rate
should come down when our debt to GDP ratio is around that 60, almost 70 something percent.
No. What I'm saying is that, there are many advanced countries with high debt to GDP ratios.
Exactly, US, Japan,
Spain
and all those.
But I'm saying you calculate, and calculate, the interest they are paying on that debt. It's not a constraint to your current budget. It's not a constraint to their current budget. If Ghana were borrowing at 3%, or like Cocoa Board, because we mastered the discipline over the years, since 1993, anytime Cocoa Board borrows, they learn to pay for it. They never said the government was in crisis. Sometimes we even paid farmers less, or we did not increase the price to farmers in order that we can service the debt. And so Cocoa Board is able to borrow at LIBOR plus 2%. Which is where we should be going. But you cannot go there without your sinking fund, your buyback, and whatever, and others extend tenor, and use your additional oil revenue. So why are we not? What happened to the 800 million that was in the second fund?
You have been a finance minister before, so I mean that discipline that you talk about, that the Cocoa Board has mastered since 1993. Why is it a challenge for us?
I'm saying that the credit goes to my boss, who, despite an election year, agreed that we were not going to earn oil revenue, so we should go to budget and reduce the budget. And I think today people should be reflecting on that. The credit goes to my boss, who enacted this, knowing very well that it will bring discipline. And you will notice that I wrote an article that said that everything that was in the new Budget Responsibility Act is already here. It was not necessary. What we needed was to do the regulations for this one. And in actual fact, it watered down what is here. The Budget Responsibility Act watered down much of what is here. So I'm saying that we have started learning from the BRICS, learning from the Latin American countries, learning from the Asian tigers to implement. We have started to implement some of the policies, that they implemented. And it was possible. We felt it was possible because we had the opportunity of crude oil exports, 73,000 barrels average. That's what we could ever master annual, 73,000 barrels. Today, we are doing about 189,000 barrels of crude oil. And it's projected that we could reach 200 by the end of the year.
Even with gas.
And it is in addition to gas. Yeah. So we had seen that this is a time to put in the discipline. And just as we use the additional oil revenue that was coming in to set up the sinking fund, infrastructure fund, which will be the one that will leverage the markets for borrowing to do commercial projects, port facilities, projects that can pay for themselves. Terminal 3, even water, electricity, because you are paying, because we had also stopped subsidy. And, instead of the subsidy, we set up the strategic stock, which will buy low and sell high, so that we can use it. Every country has strategic stock. We have said, let us take the opportunity of additional oil, revenues to implement these measures. Why? Because implementing them with new revenue would impose less pay. Right? So you don't expand your expenditure. If you expand your expenditure with all kinds of promises, you cannot do that. And that explains why my boss was restrained. After all, he could also have said, I can do many of the things that they were talking about. But he was on a path to fiscal discipline and didn't match those promises. He said, wherever it was necessary, like education, it will be progressive, so that we can measure ourselves, so that we can take care. And remember, the theme of the 2015 budget was rebalancing the budget. And when we say rebalancing the budget, we are saying move beyond using deficit as a fiscal anchor and look at how you can pay for your debt when you have the deficit. And mind you, borrowing can be planned. And let me give you an example of planning. We used to use treasury bills to pay for counterpart funds. And counterpart funds means you are borrowed. So you want to do a project for 100. And when you borrow from CDB, Exim banks in particular, because it's export, they don't pay for local costs. So they say the loan will give you up to 85%. You find money to pay the 15%. Okay. And we either use treasury bills, short notes, and others to pay for our 15%. So what did we do with Echabo Gas, CDB? All the CDB projects that we did. Every bond that we issued, we dedicated a portion of it
to pay for that.
And the reason is simple. If you take the balance and you take treasury bills, right, by the time you are doing the feasibility, the 90 days is up. And the project hasn't started. You need to roll over.
Roll over, yeah.
Or pay for it. And where was it going? And that was what we were always doing. Or you need to take loans, which you are taking for education, for, which you should have used for education, for health and others, to pay for that. So we dedicated the bond. It's in the petroleum report for 2016, 2017. You go, and we use part of that money, even though we had, needs to pay for the 15%, our 15% for the Chabo plant, because the bond is 10 years and it matches the tenor of the, CDB loan. We did the same for the additional money we took, for the Buida, Exim Bank, right, and for all the CDB projects. This is the sort of structural change that you need to do.